Great to see you all. Super glad that I get to be up first today, and also it's kind of interesting not being in the organising committee these days. So it's made it an easier day, easier start to the day for me. And look, I'm actually feeling really lucky as well that I get to sit here and have a chat to all my friends over in the US. Gio and Mary, Kat and Hector. I'll let them all introduce themselves as we go. I've been able to see a lot of different cities and a lot of different co-working spaces in my travels around the world. And it's always interesting to see how some cities do it better than others, some cities do specific things better than others, and just seeing all the range of different things that operators undertake. Broadly speaking, commercial office in Australia, when you compare it to a lot of other cities, it's not that bad. You probably walked into many offices in Australia and gone, "Oh my God, this is awful." When you walk into things overseas, you tend to walk into more of them that are actually awful. On the co-working side of things, though, for me, certainly London's has always been my favourite in terms of them really pushing the envelope. Which they certainly can, given just how much customer base they've got. I've got my own ideas on where Australia is leading, and indeed where we are lagging also. And over to the audience first up, show of hands, who thinks that Australia is leading when it comes to co-working and flex? Oh my goodness, come on. Leading in some areas. Oh, there you go. Okay, I don't even want to say, did you guys see all of those hands over there in the panel? Essentially, no one in the audience was thinking that we were leading, maybe a couple, and everybody thought Australia was lagging. So when you guys are sitting over there in the US, and Gio, this is flipping around, so you actually are the front, you're the big person on the screen right now, so I am going to flip to Gio. Do you think Australia is leading or lagging?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I have conversations with operators and enterprise users over there, it is apparent that the big part of it is being led by Australia and APAC overall. And so I actually presented last year at the Cornet conference in Dubai, and it was very apparent that the US is certainly behind APAC and Australia.
We're always a bit self-deprecating, Australians. We don't give ourselves enough credit. Thank you, Gio. Does anyone, Hector? Hector, we're not getting you really great on the sound there. Let's jump to Jamie.
Okay, so Brad, you know what? I was prepping for this panel because you sent us a lot of questions to prep for, a lot of homework. And I had a little flashback to like 2013, 2014, when I had to sub for you at the WorkTech conference in New York. And so that was a great opportunity. Thank you. So I got to present, and I remember there was a presenter from Australia, and I don't remember the details of the case study at all, but they were like years ahead of folks in the audience. And I went up afterwards and I asked about the project and why. I could just tell from the vibe that the way Australia was thinking about flexibility and creating just better places to work, like consumerizing the workplace, was just like light years ahead of the rest of the world. And I think he said something like, well, because we're out on an island, we're basically always totally, paranoid that we're behind. And so we overcompensate and we're ahead. And so I would just say, I think that may hold true. I mean, to Gio's point, some of those conversations that I've been a part with point to me. And I won't spoiler alert some of your other questions, but I could pop in a little bit later and give a couple of examples.
Thank you. And
is that better audio?
Let's go to Hector, and then Kat, I'm coming to you next.
Hector, sorry about that. Obviously, the geekiest guy in the room is why. Because we're apologies for that. So I was going to say, from like the trends that I'm watching for the things I put into the newsletter, you're definitely leading in 3 areas: impact-led spaces, things like Hub Australia being B Corp since 2013, non-CBD spaces, Work Life, and Hello Friend doing really innovative stuff outside of the main cities, and then landlord-driven flex. Worsso celebrating 10 years this year, right? Fantastic innovation. Where you're not leading is storytelling and international brand building, just to make sure it's equally balanced.
Thank you, Hector. Kat, bring us home.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Hector just said about the brand and the storytelling, because with this question, I'm not sure. It was interesting to me that barely any hands went up, but then you said we're leading in some areas and a lot of hands went up. It's like, I'm really curious to learn more, like, what are those little nuances, the impact spaces, and yeah, one of the things I hope we get into today is I want to encourage you all to be more active in the international global co-working thought leadership, even on LinkedIn and things, because we don't know what's happening for you. I mean, my data friends here have a better sense, but all in all, the global co-working community, we could hear a little bit more from Australia.
Was Chief Story Officer over at Hub. I need to pick up my game and start telling some more stories. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, really interesting. Like, you hear it, how we're thinking about what we're doing here, and then for people who collectively have probably been to more co-working spaces than collectively everybody in this room has. Also, I think it's interesting context as well. Like the Australian economy and commercial office, it's not like things are easy at the moment for any of us. And yet here you go. You've got people saying that we're still leading on things. So I think we've really got to lead into a lot of that. And let's take a bit of a call out from them on let's tell our stories and let's let everybody know what we're up to over here. Kat, I've still got you there, so I'm going to go straight back to you. What's something that you're seeing in the US or Europe at the moment that's a really big trend that you really think the operators in the room here would love to know about?
Well, I imagine you're all seeing this too, but hospitality, of course, has blown up as a main thing. And just a cautionary tale about that. The hotel industry and the co-working parallel, in some ways it works, but where it falls apart is your members are coming in day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year for some of us. So the hospitality piece, it really needs to be with a light, friendly, human touch, right? We don't want to be treated like we're coming to a hotel every day. This is our home away from home, but hospitality is huge. I'm hearing a lot of chatter about unmanned spaces, which I find really odd because you give up so much not having a human-powered community. I get it. It's a big cost saver, but that's a really interesting thing that's buzzing right now. There's a lot of talk about being social spaces, social clubs, going far beyond just being workspaces for people. That's really interesting, exciting. And spaces continue to one-up each other with really impressive designs that are striking this beautiful balance of style and functionality. And we're seeing more and more of those that really nail it. That's exciting to see.
What's an example like, Kat? Like, what was something that you just went, wow?
With the balance?
No, just what you're seeing spaces, constantly outdoing each other and picking up the game. Like, what's something that you went was just amazing?
Yeah, well, for instance, my home space, I work out of Kiln, which is a brand here, and they have prints, like I'm looking out, there's a print with a turntable and keyboards, there's music stuff, there's really cool stuff, but there are also these beautiful meeting rooms, beautiful atrium that I'm really proud to bring clients to. I feel like they nail that balance between what I need to level up my business, but also feeling like really comfortable and cool in the space. And co-working kind of went from early days like pop-up tables and IKEA furniture, whatever would work. And then we saw these really amazing spaces, but they were completely unfunctional. There were no plugs, there were no outlets, lots of soft seating, but you couldn't be there for more than half an hour. And now people are figuring out, like, what's that sweet spot of having both?
And if you do get to a city that's got a kiln in it, check it out. It is indeed a very good space. Gio, what's the biggest trend that everybody's coming to you for advice about at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think playing off the hospitality side of it is that the industry is growing like the hotel industry grew, right? There's different sectors, right? Depends what you're looking for, what kind of product, what kind of overall feel you're looking for your business, right? And so that's a big part. And as part of that ties into the hospitality side of it is the deal structures, right? In the US, we're just now starting to get traction on the management deal side of things, as opposed to Europe, APAC. And certainly Australia has a significant amount of headway in front of the US on getting these deals done, because landlords understand that it's essentially hospitality, and the way deals are structured are like hotels, right? They're hospitality based, it's based off of management deals. And so I think that's what we're seeing more and more of the shift and focus on. And it's such a variety of things. It's everything. It's not black or white, right? It's everything from a traditional lease all the way through a full management deal. But there's also percentage rent structures. There's also JVs. There's all kinds of ways that you can structure deals. Is there participation in the ownership, right? That's something I push a lot of my clients for. Is I'm like, if you can get ownership in the building and build equity on top of the operating equity, then that's the way to go.
Gio, say from today, the next 100 leases or operator agreements get signed in the US. Out of those 100, how many of them would be a traditional lease?
I think it varies, but I'll tell you, I just completed my 100th transaction and I've only done 3 management deals. So it really depends who you're focused on, right? I mean, everyone, for example, I'll use Industrious as a big example, obviously a large operator. Everyone thinks that they're doing management deals. And we actually, Jamie and I did a podcast with their real estate guy, and Perry basically shared they're more like retail leases that are percentage rent. And so I think you're probably closer to 70-30, 70% being traditional deals, 30% being management. And as part of the 70, we can use, there's some kind of guaranteed rent in there, whether it be the OPEX, whether it be basically a backstop, if you will. But I think it's going to be a while before we catch up in the US on management deals. I think you've got way more of those in Australia for sure.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is we often use, I see different people around the world particularly use the term management agreement even when they're a hybrid lease. Certainly in Australia, I'm seeing a couple of management agreements get done, but most of them are still hybrid leases and traditional leases for sure. One interesting one, though, which we'll kind of touch on later, with as fit outs get more and more expensive, it's seeing there what impact does that ultimately have on where we get to with traditional leases and hybrid agreements and management agreements. Jamie, following on from Hector there, what are you saying? Following on from Gio.
I feel like Kat dove in and captured some really good trends. I would first point out that Australia, I think, is leading in hospitality. Brad, I saw one of your most recent spaces somewhere online and it looked amazing. And you've got the food and bev. Toby at Creative Cubes, same thing, like really incredible. And I think, to Kat's point, the bar just keeps getting set, further in front of us. And I think that can be really, really challenging. I think one of the big trends really is change and evolution. We made it through the pandemic, and I know that the pandemic was especially challenging for folks in Australia for extended, lockdowns. And now it's okay, well, your build out has to be better and more hospitality and more experience, which I think some of you are doing incredibly well. One trend I would add to that I think adds to the challenge is demand for on demand. So, less willingness to commit. It used to be, you put up offices and you can fill the offices and you kind of roll with kind of a low key, more chill model. And now we've got all these demands around the experience, and the members don't necessarily want to commit to, heavy memberships, depending. But I think that goes along with one more trend I'd mention, and then we'll see if Hector can come up with anything else, which is segmentation. More than ever before, we're really seeing segmentation in the marketplace, which I think it creates a big opportunity for more, customized community spaces that are really localized, right? So for folks that cannot get to the, Hub Australia level or Creative Cubes, I think there's demand for that and demand for segmentation, which still creates plenty of opportunity.
I've seen much of the segmentation and niche spaces here. Certainly in the US, I see a lot more of them. I think there's a connection there with what Kat was saying as well, particularly as the fit outs start maxing out in terms of what you can conceivably put into a spreadsheet and it still says go. The experiential side of things is going to become increasingly important, and experiential, where it could actually be that the way I'm going to differentiate here and get a cheaper price is it is unmanned, or it's got even more stuff on it, or on a particular segment. So I think there'll be interesting responses here, particularly in Australia, where the CapEx side of things is so high. Hector, bring us home.
Absolutely. Fantastic trends from everyone. You haven't really left me much, but I'm going to try and pull some out of my hat. Definitely one thing that I'm seeing, and I spent a lot of time diving deeply into this, and it's this undercurrent of fractional offices. This idea that people are sharing one office between multiple companies, or sharing space in ways that we're not really originally selling as office units. But also seeing this new competition emerge from people who are traditionally on the sublease market, them bringing their space on and kind of running it as part co-working, part office share, is definitely eating into a lot of the opportunity that's around in kind of London. A lot of Europe is seeing a very, very big demand spike in this kind of fractional office. I want to rent for only 3 days a week. I don't want to rent by the day, but I want to only care about my office those 3 days of the week. And from all the conversations I've had, it's not working in Asia for some reason, or APAC region, but it is very, very popular in London. It's very, very popular in some of the American markets. So definitely a trend worth just kind of investigating a little bit further. On top of that, I did hear Toby and Creative Cubes mentioned, and obviously Hub Australia. The way that spaces are being marketed is changing rapidly. The way that content is being put out there, and you're kind of experiencing the space, whether it's a fly through, whether it's kind of seeing people interact with a space, whether it's seeing that membership club, like what Switchyards does and what other folks do, seeing the people actually use the space is definitely a huge trend that's shifting as as co-working space becomes more consumerized. As people are deciding where they want to work, that is a huge trend that is shaking up quite a bit of at least the booking side of the market. And the last one is there's a huge bubble sitting about how do we value flex spaces. It's something that everyone's looking at. No one wants to really point at in the room. But as soon as that becomes a reality, we'll have a valuation for a flex floor plan that's not zero, and then the whole market changes again.
I'm going to stay with you on that one, Hector, and then also you through your newsletter, like you must be in contact with so many different brands. Yardi just valued WeWork at X dollars. I think it was 430. What are some of the flow-on effects of the WeWork Yardi deal that you think we should be thinking about here in Australia?
I think there's many aspects to that deal. Firstly, fantastic swoop in by Yardi, getting away from Adam. That was a fantastic power play in itself. Secondly, Yardi is a tech company, and they're going to look for tech benefits. So that is another play just worth kind of looking at the tech stack itself and the partnership they had there. Yardi also had a relationship with WeWork where they sold the product together. So they're protecting that part of the business. What that actually means for everybody else is, I personally believe it will be resold fairly shortly, but I also think that there is a play to be made for an asset-light network. And that is what the golden goose is for these networks. If they can create a way where they acquire the customer, they own the relationship, but then they put them in your spaces, that's what everyone's going after. And it's WeWork, Industrious with their desk pass breather play. There's a lot of people trying to build this asset-light network. And I think that's what we should be watching if WeWork and Yardi make that play. That's what I would be looking out for.
Jamie, jump to you. Still in the same boat, and you can link it in with the trends. And what are some of the bigger implications here with WeWork, Yardi? And I'll also weave in there IWG and a investment in Instant.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of power in the tech companies having insights from the marketplace, right? So they get the actual data. For the rest of us, the industry is not very transparent yet. You know, there's just IWG is one of a couple of public companies. So it's hard to get, you know, pricing data, demand data, transaction data. It's hard to get any of that. So having that at your fingertips, there's a lot of value to that. I hadn't thought of the fact that it's going to get resold. I do think there are a lot of folks who are sort of like suspicious of this relationship because, you know, incentives will always say you're going to leverage whatever you can leverage to, you know, increase shareholder value. So if they say it's going to be arm's length, I'm not sure we'll see. So yeah, I think we'll see how long this lasts. I'm not sure. I'd be curious about, you know, what somebody else thinks about, will we sort of feel it at the individual operator level and kind of what the impacts are there. Gio, maybe you have or Kat,
do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, my perspective on this one is when WeWork came on the scene, they were the villain of co-working, right? They were poaching members and parking trucks outside of co-working spaces and offering free 6 months of membership or office rent. Like it was really this aggressive thing where the people who had been building out their little spaces for years, WeWork was the villain. And now there's this opportunity to kind of reposition, because I think the net of WeWork is it increased awareness of co-working and it opened up some things. So now there's this opportunity of like, can WeWork redeem itself with this Yardi thing? And I'm a bit out of my lane with this, but it's interesting just observing what's happening and what's going to happen. And with IWG, they were kind of the old tired brand, you know, that co-working is not that. And now they're kind of reinventing and doing some interesting things. We'll see how it all plays out with Instant and IWG.
And Gio, what are you saying there?
So I get to have a kind of unique perspective being in the role I'm in through GWA as the president, but also as a broker from the real estate standpoint. I get to have a different conversation. So I'll give you a great example is we've actually, Jamie, I thought Jamie would jump in on this, but she's actually going to do a fireside chat with an aunt Yardi at GWA, because part of what we want to get to is how did you get into this role, right? How a lot of people don't know how he even became an investor in WeWork to ultimately end up in the position where he was able to make a bigger investment and really take control of it. So it'll be really interesting to hear that story, but back to the beginning, like Kat was just saying about Adam, right? Adam and Anant are completely polar opposite personalities, right? Anant's very humble and he comes from humble me. I mean, what he has, he's built from nothing, right? And so his desire is to help the industry and really catapult it, right? He saw an opportunity to step in and help a client, right? And so I think what this is going to create is what we've been wanting so badly, which is more data, more transparency, right? And you know, I'm working closely with the Instant team. I'm working closely with Yardi to try to figure out how do we build some of that transparency and synergy. So, like the hotel industry continuing to play out, but hospitality is you can buy a star report that allows for you to see what occupancy is, what rates are in the market, and all those things. And that takes transparency. That takes everyone coming together and providing information. And so I think we're going to continue to see more and more acquisitions and groups come together, like we saw with IWG and Instant, like we've seen with Yardi and WeWork. I mean, I think you're going to see more and more of that, right? We've seen DustPass be acquired here recently. We've seen a couple other partnerships, and I think we're going to continue to see it, right? And I think it's positive, it's helpful for the industry because it allows for us to create more of that transparency, more data, more factual-based scientific evidence that we can kind of build off of.
And Gio, do you think that that will be GWA where you're president, or will that be FWA that puts out those reports, or is it always still going to be, for instance, Rubber Desk locally here in Australia, or Instant Reports, or it's all of the above?
I think, I mean, in a perfect world, it's all of us working collectively, right? I mean, that's part of what my focus has been the last couple of years is been like GWA and Juicy in the US, right? Is how do we collectively work together and build up the industry, right? That's why it's exciting to be here on FWA having these conversations is, I mean, the goal is ultimately we have transparency across the entire globe because there's patterns, there's trends that we're seeing, right? What are we seeing with enterprise, right? That's another trend that we didn't really get into yet that is huge, right? How is enterprise using flex space more and more, right? And so the more conversations we can have across the country, because a lot of these corporations are corporations that are global.
So one of my takes on the WeWork Yardi thing is that in Australia now, we're actually not going to see a lot of impact, but in a couple of years' time, we're really going to see the flow and effects of all of the different dominoes that fall and the different acquisitions and alliances and all of those things that come to bear. Just interested there, Gio, just as a quick one, like when Anant Yardi is going into the office or Jamie Hodari is going to the office, are they really talking about what's happening in Australia and APAC? Or right now, like they are just trying to make their US businesses work in their European businesses?
Well, I mean, I think Yardi is global, right? So I think Yardi is trying to figure out how they continue growing and evolving across the entire globe, right? And so they've got teams in multiple places, same as Instant, right, and others. But someone like an Industrious, along with Regis and others, are trying to right-size their existing portfolios and figure out, you know, what are we building? Why are we building it? How are we building it, right? And so I think it's still on the radar for someone like a Jamie Hodari, but I think he's got enough going on between North America and Europe to really focus on. But I mean, that's even conversations that are being had. A lot of these brands are trying to figure out, you know, how do we continue growing, right? You take a brand like Industrious, for example, and how many markets can they go into before they need a, you know, suburban model or some other variation, a cost-effective play, right? And we've seen that with continued use hotels, right? Bonvoy's got 32 brands now, right? And some of these brands overlap in offering, you know, being limited service or first service, but they've got different names, different brands that are targeted toward different audiences. And so I think that's what some of these brands are trying to figure out, that IWG's kind of gotten out ahead of it with, you know, they've got their Regis, they've got Spaces, they've got Signature, they've got a couple other brands across the country that, or really the globe, that they've really focused on to how to differentiate depending on the need and demand.
Good one. And so we've got all these brands from the operators, but we're also seeing a lot of jockeying around the brands of marketplaces and aggregators. And I'm going to go to you first up, Hector, but just one, guys, I am going to do, I'm not going to take all of this slot with me just asking questions. I'm trying to make sure that what I'm asking is useful for everyone, but I am going to do a good chunk of question time. The Slido app. If you could start putting the questions there in Slido, it'll give me a sense of just how long I need to leave so that everybody gets to take advantage of having these four panelist experts in the room with us. Hector, what's happening with marketplaces and aggregators?
That is a great question, and I am looking forward to asking them that on stage at GWA. You heard it here first. But the number one thing that is happening is they are all trying to figure out where the puck is going. There is one big trend, one big elephant in the room called AI that is terrifying every single operator, because the future of booking space is interfaceless, which means people will be booking and accessing and interacting with physical spaces without going to a system. They will be talking to a assistant, they will be talking to a calendar app, they will be talking to something like a meeting scheduler, and that will process all the things that we now consider as tedious manual processes. They will be all fully automated in a way that we will engage with space by just walking into them. And that is what everyone who is thinking about where the puck is going is worried about. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing at St. Cruz, helping operators be ready for that, because the aggregators that are looking towards that have to automate the entire process. They have to make sure that it's not about street to suite anymore. It's about someone doesn't even know which space they're going to. They're just going there because the computer said that's where they're going. And it sounds dystopian and it sounds terrifying and all that stuff, but it's not going to be for every member of a co-working space. There's going to be an entire new portion of the next generation of workforce who are going to interact with space in a way that we never have. And those are the folks that the aggregators are looking towards, because we've booked our office spaces. We know how to book office spaces. The next generation has never had to book office space, and they're going to come in and walk into spaces and expect everything to be streamlined and as seamless as ordering food on Uber Eats or whatever the Australian version of that is.
So where's Jim? Jim from Rubber Desk. What's your computer going to be? Where's your computer going to be telling me to go to work? Okay, there you go. Jamie.
Well, I wanted to ask Hector a follow-up. So Hector, what does that mean for the aggregators? I mean, do they have a role? Or in the marketplaces? I know that they don't like the term aggregator. I mean, does AI, and I just actually did a podcast episode about this, not exactly the same, about going to the groomer. It was so automated and so just like boom, boom, boom. But when I got there, there was a really friendly face and a wonderful groomer who made my two dogs look lovely. But I thought it was interesting how like seamless it was. Not exactly is dystopian by any means as you're talking about, but yeah. So are the marketplaces not needed anymore? Like, well, yeah, what role did they play in that world?
They play a slightly different role, right? I've been in tech since I was 13, and I always knew that the best tech is invisible, right? It does what it needs to do without you knowing or interacting with it on a repeated basis. The best aggregators will become invisible. They will be the ones that facilitate the payment. They don't have your payment details, but they have the contract with your employer. They have the relationship with whoever's paying the bill. They have the relationship with the space. There's still a lot of work to be done. It just doesn't have to be in my face. I don't need to go to a map. And Jim, I know I love your platform, but you don't need to see the map. You don't need to scroll. You don't need to filter by these things anymore, because
it's like search results versus ChatGPT. Like I don't need to do all the
exactly.
work. It's just gonna
so it's gonna kind of just there are going to be multiple ways of interacting, and I think we're going to start seeing like riches in the niches, as that saying goes. Some aggregator is going to be perfect for enterprise and above. You're going to have another aggregator that absolutely nails the Etsy workers marketplace, the others that nail the kind of mom and pop co-working members. But that's going to be where they're useful. They're going to become parts of the puzzle as opposed to owning the relationship, because a lot of the times if you speak to operators now, sorry, I know I'm venting now, so stop me at any time, Brad. A lot of our operators don't like that their brand is being sucked into an aggregator, right? So you go to an aggregator, you interact with the aggregator owns the relationship with you. And then when they come to the space, it's like a whole thing. Is it my customer? Is it the aggregators? That will become invisible. You will interact with the spaces that are best for you based on the algorithm output. And you have a better relationship. As you said, you'll get to that front person, that smiley face, whether it's your dog being groomed or a fantastic cup of coffee and a great community, it's the same experience, right? You're experiencing that better because the tech got out of the way. And that's what the aggregators have to be striving towards.
So I'm not going to be able to vent to Miro at Office R&D or Mark at Liquid Space about owning my customer relationship anymore. And I say that this is a thing that collectively, including with Liquid Space and R&D, I also thank them all for the business that they send my way as well. So it's like, what is that balance? How do we cut up the pie to make sure that we've got a happy customer at the end of the day? But then there's an operator, there's a landlord, there's our staff, there's our customers, there's our suppliers. So how do we cut up that pie and still have profitable businesses at the end of the day? I think that ultimately becomes a really big part of what we go through in this next 10 years. Without putting words in your mouth, Kat, I'm guessing you have a good point of view on, do we actually want to have the AI tell us to go there, or do we actually want the person who knows my name at the welcome desk and knows my coffee order? That's the workspace I'm going to go to, not what the computer tells me to go to. What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, I mean, that's the space I'm going to go to also. And there, corporates who are hopping around and need to just go into a space, that's a different story. But those of us who want to be members of a space long term. But first of all, Hector blew my mind. We're going to have to follow up on that, my friend. And I love this question because there's this really interesting tension happening now where for the space operators that I work really closely with them, and they're completely overwhelmed. Which marketplace should they be on? Which ones work? Something that works really well for one space because they're in a kind of funky, cool neighborhood doesn't work at all for someone else who's in the suburbs. Like, it's an overload of choices, and there are new marketplaces coming on all the time. And this is the interesting piece, like the legacy ones, they're trying to train new operators that they're the legacy ones. They're like, no, we're here. We're the best ones, because people are inundated with offers, and it's almost like predatory listings where they're just being thrown onto these aggregators. It's a complete overwhelm for the operators. And one last piece that I think is so interesting, I've heard from in the last year, 2 people who own marketplaces. They said they're seeing an increase in people who want to work in neighborhood spaces. They don't want that kind of big corporate-y vibe. They want a small local feel. So my advice is, regardless of what size or scale your brand, you have to nail that neighborhood feel, even if you have multiple locations, because that's what people are looking for.
And I should have said before, if you like what Kat's saying there, I'm going to have 2 books for the first question that's been asked, which, by the way, somebody already has asked that. And the best question, we'll get one of Kat's Daily Code books. So please keep the questions coming. And I actually do have some good questions in here. So I'm going to move. Gio, you get to add your last thoughts on this topic of marketplaces, aggregators, AI, and then I'm going to do a quick rapid fire round of questions, and then it's going to be over to everyone in the audience. Gio, any words on AI marketplaces?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, AI is going to change everything, right? And so I do agree that hospitality and human touch and interaction is still always going to be the key way to go. But back to Jamie's point, I mean, I love listening to her post about how her interaction changed when trying to set that appointment with a groomer, right? And so there is something to be said about consistency, speed, and most importantly, just the overall ability to take advantage of how quickly people want to move, right? The more opportunities we have, the more we become society that wants a quick response, right? We want to get money immediately out of ATM. We want to pull up to a restaurant and get fast food. We want to do a lot of those things. And so there's something to be said, because if they're looking you up, they're looking up other people as well, right? So a lot of times it's who gets back to them quickly and can offer the most information and, quite honestly, most convenience to get in and get the product that they're needing.
Good one. Okay, we're going to move into a rapid fire round. How I'm going to make this one work, but literally 5-second answers, 1-word answers, 1 sentence. Otherwise, I'll cut you off. I'm going to go I'm going to go across the screen here. We'll go Geo, Jamie, Kat, Hector, each time around. Okay, we are starting now. So Geo, what does co-working and flex need to stop doing and put in the bin?
More transparency.
More transparency. Jamie.
Overwhelming their community managers.
Kat.
Stop using executive suites as the model and start looking forward to what people really want.
Ooh.
And stop putting photos of empty spaces on your websites. Stop.
Okay, co-working, or is it co-working, or is it flex, or is it something else? Geo.
Flexible workspace.
I'm sticking with co-working.
And they're two different things. I love co-working. I have no problem with flex, but to figure out which one you are and do that.
And building on that, it doesn't, I'm as the writer of This Week in co-working, but we use the word that sells. People only care about the benefit, not the product. Talk about that.
Awesome. We're into our rhythm. Okay. Best advice to give to a single site operator?
It's on your deal structure.
So the deal structure with the landlord?
Correct.
Yep.
He means your rent, your free rent, your space size, etc. I would say get the basics right. Things are changing so quickly, and yet so many operators still have holes in their sales funnels and lots of execution issues. So get your deal structure right and then stick to the basics.
I would say find a way to be a category of one. You can't compete with the big brands with deep pockets on advertising. So you need to beat them with your vision, your values, your vibe, and your community.
And definitely build processes and document the processes. You're a space of one now, but if you ever want to sell, if you ever want to build, you want to expand, you need your SOPs. So lock those in.
Okay, for a city or regional multi-site operator, best advice, Geo?
Focus on your community.
Focus on profitability.
Have a really strong brand promise and purpose and make sure it's consistent everywhere.
And I would say map your processes and map your productivity. What doesn't get tracked gets lost.
And then if you're a national or international operator, probably remember to have done all of the things that everybody just said to the single site and city operators. But now, if you're a national or international, what should you focus on?
Know your mission and vision.
Ooh. Scale with an commitment to localizing.
Make some more noise. We want to hear from you. Tell us what's going on and step forward as a leader.
I'm going to build on both of those. It is definitely export your awesomeness earlier. Figure out how to make that noise, but also get into the market before you're ready. Kind of start having those conversations as early as you can if you want to keep expanding.
Will IWG and Industrious list in the US in 2025 or 2026, or who knows?
None of the above. I don't think they will.
So no one's going to give us our valuation points that everybody needs. Jamie?
Yeah, I have to. Well, IWG is listed in
London,
the UK. Yeah, in London. Yeah, Industrious needs an exit. I'm going to say, how about 2027?
Nice.
I have no idea. That's not my lane at all. So I'm just an observer on this one.
I just want to make sure we're all protected. This is not financial advice. We are just here for entertainment purposes. I do think we're going to see a IWG switch, but I think they're going to offload Worker or Instant first. But industrials, I have no idea.
Good. Okay, let's keep it clean. The last time I did not sleep at night for business reasons was, what's keeping you awake at night?
Financial markets.
Yes, that, and I think all of the change and trying to help operators make sense of it and figure out how to continue to thrive, whatever that means for them in a just constantly evolving marketplace.
I made a rookie mistake. I created something in a vacuum, and when I launched it, nobody wanted it.
And the last time I didn't sleep for business reasons was preparing a panel for a bunch of Aussies when they told me it was going to be contentious.
Okay, and I'm not asking you to show your political colours, just to give us a sense of what's happening on the ground. Is it Harris, is it Trump, or is it someone else?
I'm going to pass.
Seriously? Brad. Kat wants to answer.
I said, so obvious. I am over the moon excited to vote for Vice President Harris.
I can neither vote, and I'm here on a visa, so I'm going to say I have no idea.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. I am going to switch over to audience questions. And whoever asked this one, you were the first question. So what are the biggest challenges currently for global operators when considering new business in Australia, is the question.
Is that for anyone to answer?
Anyone jump in on that?
Okay, I can jump
Back
in.
to what I said originally about community, right? It's really understanding the dynamics within the community you're moving into. So you need local experts to help you understand those trends and overall data.
I'm going to go a little bit more geographic. Just the time zone and the distance between decision making in Europe or Asia with running operations in Australia. That is also a question that keeps coming up for folks who are looking to expand into the region.
Okay, fractional office products, and Hector, this is an interesting one just from a terminology point of view. Like when you were talking about fractional office, I immediately went to fractional ownership of housing and what forth. I think at Hub we're more of it's a desk share or an office share when we think about what fractional office products are. But so the question here is how are they being priced? And how do you, are they being implemented just to stem losses? You've got an office you just never sold, let's make it a fractional office. Or have you actually seen, or is anyone taking a proactive stance, even in performing centres? And Hector, I'll go to you on that one.
Sure. So definitions, like when I asked a whole bunch of operators what fractional office was, they were when it's 2 or more companies using the same space on a recurring schedule. That's kind of the general term. A few folks have slightly different nuances, but that was the main definition. What we did see in the research that I did is that when it does work, there's a 30% premium on a traditional office fee. So you can rent to two businesses for less than a monthly fee, and together they're still paying 30% more than the office would have got you on its own. Some folks are doing it because they have underperforming assets and they use it to fill an office that they couldn't fill full time. Others are doing it because they have demand from the market, because the occupier or the member doesn't want to pay for 5 days when they only need it for 3 or they only need it for 2. What's also interesting is spaces that have got 24/7 access, they can expand that. So you have some companies using it 3 and 3, as opposed to only thinking about the workday week, right? So it does open up new revenue opportunities, and we are seeing that as a pretty interesting model. But there are people who are just using it, getting 2 days of the week on a space, and the office was sitting empty, right? So there is a bit of both happening at the same time.
Brad, can I jump in real quick? I love this product. I think it really hits with the trends of what Hector described, like on demand, commitment phobic. Like I don't need it. I don't go anywhere 5 days a week. You know, I have so much variety in my work life that it doesn't make sense for me to commit to an office. I work with a lot of operators who do like a bucket of hours model versus like 2 days or 3 days. So you're overselling an asset. And we have folks who do really well, like hit 2x the revenue of what an office might generate. So they're being proactive about it and putting those in their inventory versus a fixed office. And it probably depends a lot on right market, who your end user is, et cetera, kind of back to the basics, always know who your users are. I think it's absolutely worth experimenting with and stick with it and market it for, 3 to 6 months before you say this isn't working, because we see operators doing really well with it. And you have to manage it through your, like an office R&D, your space management platform, so that people could go in and book their hours and, it gets debited, and then make it use it or lose it. Those hours don't roll over. It's a membership to a fractional shared office, but I like it. And we see a lot of operators doing really well with it.
So what I would add is a big part of it has to do with the industry, right? So I'll tell you, Jamie and I interviewed a therapy space, I believe about 6-9 months ago, and they actually build out spaces for mental health experts, ultimately psychologists, psychiatrists, et cetera. And if they build out, call it 20 to 30 offices, they may have 80 different counselors using those 20 to 30 offices, right? And so it's understanding what your value is, what your proposition is, and how much people actually need that. So it was, I'm not an operator, so it blows my mind to be able to keep track of how many people are using these offices and what hours they're using them and how they stay clean and all that stuff, so that they can be most efficient and useful.
Follow-on question that came in on this one. Are people over in the US signing the same license agreement for these fractional offices that you do for a normal office, or is it a brand new agreement? Does anyone know that?
Well, it's the same agreement. Like literally, I provided therapy space. They're the Regis agreement, right? It's just a license, right? It's just nuances within that license.
But they aren't paying deposits and things. I mean, it depends on the structure. I think what Hector's talking about, maybe it's more office-like. The bucket of hours is really probably more, co-working like, but you're using an office as your workspace when you come in, but there's no deposit, or, you're not hanging stuff on the wall or anything like that.
Yeah, from what we're saying.
Sorry, you go, Hector.
No, I was saying we were seeing the same. The only difference is when it is a 3-2 or 3-3 split of an office, there is extra terms, so an extra kind of guideline for how to leave the space when you're so it just comes down to the logistics of kind of maintaining good community values as opposed to implementing a different contract, which is what seems to be working the best, at least in the UK, which is where they have the longest experience with actual running these kind of spaces and making profit from them.
I think this is for you, will be for you, Gio, because you've got the landlord perspective, but anybody jump in if you want to. Net zero and co-working, as the end providers of physical space to business, is this a net opportunity or risk for our industry? Are we ready?
Well, I think it's an incredible opportunity, right? And it's been happening. People don't realize it, but WeWork made a big splash with their HQ product, but you've got service providers like Liquid Space, Instant, and others that are offering that product to the end user in some capacity that's not an actual co-working capacity, right? And so landlords are realizing that, and they're starting. I mean, I'll tell you what's moving most in the US right now are flex suites that are already built out, right? They're pre-built suites by landlords that allow people to step in and have flexibility, right? And so landlords are starting to realize that, and service providers are too. Right. And so it really comes down to what the enterprise user, what the end user is needing and wanting. Right. Some of these are willing to pay a premium to not have to deal with the nuances of a lease or management of maintenance and management of space or anything else. So I think that's going to continue evolving and growing.
Anybody else want to add anything? Or So I think question time is the hardest one when you're facilitating these ones. To have the you don't have the line of sight for who's the best person to answer. So does AI open the possibility of having more involved events and activations and free up teams to engage more meaningfully with members? Hope so. Hector?
Absolutely. I mean, everything that we do at Syncaroo is to allow the humans of our flex spaces to do the tasks they actually enjoy doing. And we do that through kind of integrations of systems, but AI is going to enable that, right? The more people can engage your space without taking your most valuable asset, and I know you spend a lot of money on rent, but your people are your most valuable asset. The more you can leverage them to do the things that they are great at, the better the experience is going to be for every single member. So I absolutely 100% believe that technology will enable our spaces to become more hospitable, more friendly, more engaging, more accessible, and it's just going to be more seamless to interact with.
Do you want to add to, like, I'm a big believer that AI does not take the community manager's job. It's actually what makes their job fun again. Kat, anything there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Brad. And Hector and I have been having this conversation for many years that what we're trying to do is free people up. A mutual friend of, I think all of us, Iris Kavanaugh, she always says your community manager is your most important hire. And that you need to give them the freedom to just be talking to members, to just have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the space, who's working on what, who should be making connections, who's having a terrible week. And the more Hector can handle all these things and deal with the tech stacks and all of that, the more freed up the operators are to do that.
I like this one. Some Australians still don't know what co-working is. Is it similar in the US?
100% yes. Our next convo is on how to educate your community about co-working. We're still very much there. We sent out a survey a month or 6 weeks ago, and one of the top 5 things that came back that people struggle with is they're like, people don't know we're here. They don't know what we do. So absolutely yes.
I think it's a chicken or egg problem in some markets. I do some feasibility study work for landlords and operators looking at markets, and I get market demand reports done. And I'm still shocked, like, I'll get a market like Nashville where it's just like there's a ton of search volume. It looks great. And then another market where there's almost none. We've had 2 of those pop up, and it's a little bit chicken or egg because there's not a lot of supply, right? But then the supply gets really intimidated because of the education factors. It's a heavy lift when you have to start paying rent and you think, the market doesn't really know what's going on and they're not searching for us as a solution yet. So, yep, still happening.
I'm getting my wrap up. I do still have a few questions here. I'm going to ask one more. We've got one word answer round on this one as well. Where's the best or most memorable co-working space you've been in? So where? Somebody jump in first.
I mean, so I've got 2. I'll go one APAC, right? Being an Executive Center's location in Dubai last year was absolutely amazing. I didn't even know Executive Center was as big as they are, but they offered incredible product. And then here in the US, I'd say Rome, based out of Atlanta, because they've got incredible hospitality. They have an incredible pedigree of hospitality background, and just the way they deliver and execute on office, but most importantly, their event and meeting space.
Awesome. Jamie?
I'm going to pick Fora in London. It's got food and bev, great vibe, beautiful space, great community from what I could tell. I was really impressed.
Awesome. Kat?
My first home co-working space was Next Space Santa Cruz, and the space in and of itself wasn't that impressive, but I got dropped into a fully formed community. So that was perfect. And now my home space in Park City is like exactly what I need from a space. So that's the one I'm loving right now.
Hector?
I'm gonna cop out and say I'm a fan of way too many spaces to pick one. So I'm gonna
can't offend any of your brand sponsors. And hey, thank you so much for that. And I again extend an invitation for you all to come out here to Australia. So when somebody next asks you that question, you can include an Australian operator from in this room on the in your answers for that. Thank you so much. It's a thrill to get to have a chat with you, and I can't wait to buy you a beer when I see you sooner rather than later. Thank you for your input, and thank you for everything you do.